Walk with me.
I am. How are they increased that trouble me? Many are they that rise up against me. Many there be which saith, my soul, there is no help for him in God. Selah. But thou, O Most High, art a shield for me, my glory, and the lifter up of my head. I cried to the Most High with my voice, and he heard me out of his holy hill, Selah. I laid me down and slept. I awakened, for the I Am sustained me. I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people that have set themselves against me round about. Arise, O Most High, save me, O my God, for thou hast smitten all my enemies upon the cheekbone, and thou hast broken the teeth of the ungodly. Psalms chapter 3, verses 1 through 7. Yes, and deliver me from the hands of evil spirits who have sway over the hearts and thoughts of men. And let them not lead me astray from thee, my God. Establish thou me, my seed, forever, that we go not astray henceforth and forevermore. Jubilees, chapter 12 and verse 20. Yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We thank God for you, and you. I'm Mr. Clay on YouTube. And walk with me. Yes, we're going to walk. We will walk through this whole thing. This is what we're doing. Some of you take it as, oh, he's just reading. Oh, this and that. No. I'm reading. That's true. But the fact is the fact, what do we say? What is the comment between the readings? What are we trying to put some type of charge in your mind to help you think on the scripture, especially these scriptures that have been rejected of those of Christianity, Islam, and other denominations of the Adamic faith. We'll put it that way. Yes, we're in chapter 14 of Jasher. Chapter 14 of Jasher, the book of Jasher, and verse 1. And in those days there in the land of Shinar, a wise man who had understanding in all wisdom, and of a beautiful appearance. But he was poor and indigent, and his name was Rechiah, and he was hard set to support himself. And he resolved to go to Egypt to Osiris, the son of Anam, king of Egypt, or Misraim, to show the kings his wisdom. Now we have to realize that now it switches from saying Misraim to Egypt, which is not even a name really. It's a name given by colonizers. You put it that way. Misraim is Hebrew. But this here is the colonists, to get you to understand. I'm not trying to justify what they do, because many times when they change a name, it's verily to confuse and to mislead and misguide those who are not versed in the scriptures. Now, or who are somewhat versed in the scriptures, we'll put it that way. Now, verse 2, and he resolved to go to Egypt, to Osiris, the son of Anam, king of Egypt, to show the king his wisdom, for perhaps he might find grace in his sight, to raise him up and give him maintenance. And Rechiah did so. And when Rechiah came to Egypt, he asked the inhabitants of Egypt concerning the king. And the inhabitants of Egypt told him the custom of the king of Egypt. Now, this is the custom. For it was then the custom of the king of Egypt, or Misraim, that he went from his royal palace and was seen abroad only one day in the year. This is it. And after that, the king would return to his palace to remain there. Now, on the day when the king went forth, he passed judgment, in the land, and everyone having suit or a lawsuit, yes, everyone having a lawsuit or a suit came before the king that day to obtain his request. And when Rechiah heard of the custom in Egypt, and that he could not come to the presence of the king, he grieved greatly and was very sorrowful. And in the evening, Micaiah went out and found a house in the ruins, formerly a bakehouse in Egypt. And he abode there all night in bitterness of soul. Why he only comes out? I got something to say, is what he's trying to say. And pinched with hunger. I mean, no food, in a raggedy house, all demolished. And sleep was removed from his eyes. You can imagine being a dark place there at that time, no lights, no nothing. I mean, no fire burning in the night, no one walking around, and you in a bakehouse, and here you are. And you're bitter already, and you know there's animals walking around, and there's things happening, you know, critters and all kind of things. Verse 7, and Micaiah considered within himself what he should do in the town until the king made his appearance. Now, really, what he did, he squatted. He squatted in the bakehouse, according to our today's understanding. And how he might obtain himself there, in verse 8. And he arose in the morning and walked out and met in his way those who sold vegetables and various sorts of seeds with which they supplied the inhabitants. And Micaiah wished to do the same in order to get a maintenance in the city. In other words, get a business. But he was unacquainted with the custom of the people. And he was like a blind man among them. Now, a lot of times we go to different places. You go to Africa, you might go to Australia or Europe. Or if you're in Africa, you might come here to the United States. It's best for you to get acquainted with the custom of the people. And you have different areas where different customs, different neighborhoods where different customs. Some of them are wicked and some of them are not. Some of them are wicked in a way that you may not understand. And some of them are wicked in a way of violence and, you know, petty stuff. But some of them are wicked in a way of, should I say, manipulation. And should I say, being that of a con, as we call a con man. Yes. Now these things, whatever they are, some type of thing that would devastate you in the end. It's best to get to know the area that you're about to visit. It's best to get to know that area. It's not all the people, but those are the people that area is known by, as the people that does these type of things. And they can be very few, but apparently they have a broad net to try to get any wayfaring stranger. Now, in verse 10, and when he obtained vegetables to sell them for his support, and the rabble assembled about him and ridiculed him and took his vegetables from him and left him nothing. Now, we know in different places there are some people that get jealous because he looked like them and everything. He come from another place. Why should he sell seeds in our place? Why should he have better business than we have? Now, these probably come from other businesses or rival businesses, and they wanted to get rid of the competition. Now, things happen. Things happen. You just can't, instead of just knowing, when you go set up a business, you want to know your competition and what they're capable of. Yes, you need to know these things. Now, here he is. He's in Egypt or Mizraim, and he's trying to set up a business, poor, and he's just barely making it, starving, hungry, and now he gets seeds and he's getting ready to sell vegetables. And they took his vegetables from him, we're in verse 10, and left him nothing. And he rose up from there in bitterness of soul and went sighing and to the bakehouse in which he had remained all the night before, and he slept there the second night. Now on that night again he reasoned within himself, how could he have saved himself from starvation? And he devised a scheme. Now, this is a wise man for you, a man that knows how, in other words, it's sort of a person that knows how to fix things. In other words, deductible reasoning or mathematical reasoning. In other words, if this equals this, that equals that, or whatever you want to say. Now, this is why mathematics is so important, because it gives a person a sense of reasoning, not only in numbers, but also in deductions. Yes. And verse 12. And on that night, again, he reasoned within himself how he could save himself from starvation. And he devised a scheme how to act. Okay, he came up with a plan. And he rose up in the morning and acted ingeniously and went and hired 30 strong men of the rabble. You rile some thugs. See, sometimes this is how gangs and, different regimes, or should I say illegal actions happen as well as illegal. Yes. Now, he didn't have no money to pay him, as we note here. But in the end, this man is the middleman. You do the dirty work, and you give the money to me, and I'll distribute it. I'll pay you. Okay? Carrying their war instruments in their hands, and he led them to the top of the Egyptian sepulchre. Okay, the top of the Egyptian sepulchre, whatever that was, Sphinx or whatever it is. And he placed them there, whether there was Sphinx then. It could have just been a mound. And he commanded them, saying, Thus saith the king, strengthen yourself, and be violent men. And let no man be buried here until 200 pieces of silver be given. So he uses the name of the king. Never seen the king, don't know the king, but he's using something most people need. They need a burial place for their dead. That's what he did. And so he devised his scheme. This is a really ingenious scheme. And then he may be buried. Still in verse 14. And those men did according to the order of Rechiah, to the people of Mizraim or Egypt, the whole of that year. They made some money. 200 pieces of silver, that's a lot. And in 8 months' time, Rechiah and his men gathered great riches of silver and gold, and Rechiah took a great quantity of horses and other animals, and he hired more men. And he gave them horses, and they remained with him. In other words, he took his money. He took his money, and the money that he made, he reinvested in what he was doing, or whatever his venture is, he reinvested in it instead of making himself rich. See, sometimes in business, we get to the point where we want to be rich. We make a lot of money, but we don't put any money into beautifying your establishment. We don't put any money into making sure, that the employees are safe and that they're well paid, that they might be loyal even in your absence. See, within reason. And many times this causes many businesses to fail. And then reasonable prices. We can't let our expectations of being rich interfere with efficiency. Now, and when the year came around, at that time the king went forth into the town. All the inhabitants of Egypt assembled together, or Mizraim, to speak to him concerning the work of Rechiah and his men. And the king went forth on the appointed day, and all the Egyptians came before him and cried unto him, saying, May the king live forever. What is this thing thou doest in the town of thy servants, not to suffer a dead body to be buried until such much silver and gold be given? Was there ever the like unto this done in the whole earth? This is capitalism. So who's the father of capitalism? Rechiah. It's not Joseph. Rechiah is the father of capitalism. He capitalized off the dead. Because capitalism is really full of lies. Now, Rechiah Egypt was a capitalist. Yes, there were. Now, there was never like unto this done in the whole earth from the days of former kings. Yeah, even from the days of Adam unto this day. See, they know. They know. Many of them would say, we did not know. No, you don't know because your parents did not teach you from their parents to from their parents. Yes, they did not teach you anything. The dead should not be buried only for a set price. And we know it to be the custom of kings to take a yearly tax from the living. But thou dost not only do this, but from the dead thou also exactest a tax day by day. Verse 20. Now, O king, we can no more bear this, for the whole city is ruined on this account, and dost thou not know it? And when the king heard all that they had spoken, he was very wroth, and his anger burned within him at this affair. And he had known nothing of it. And the king said, who and where is he that dares to do this wicked thing in my land without my command? Surely you will tell me. And they told him all the works of Rechiah and his men. And the king's anger was aroused, and he ordered Rechiah and his men to be brought before him. And apparently the king had a bigger army and more stronger men. And Rechiah took about 1,000 children. This is a man that's very wise. And sons and daughters, and clothed them in silk and embroidery, and he set them upon horses and sent them to the king by means of his men. And he also took a great quantity of silver and gold and precious stones and a strong and beautiful horse. I mean, just a prancing horse with his breast all out and just prancing. Yes. Okay. As a present for the king, which he came before the king and bowed down to the earth before him. Now you have to realize the earth at this time, there was really not any deserts. Deserts really, there are deserts, but there wasn't deserts. Most of the land of the earth was pretty much greenery. They were greenery. The deserts as we know them today, they were green. They were luscious. I mean, vegetation would go everywhere. But because of the curse is when deserts start forming. Now, these children were clothed, he clothed them in silk and embroidery, and he set them upon horses and sent them to the king by means of his men. And he also took a great quantity of silver and gold and precious stones and a strong and beautiful horse as a present for the king, which with he came before the king and bowed down to the earth before him. And the king and his servants and all the inhabitants of Egypt wondered at the work of Rechiah. And they saw his riches and the present that he had brought to the king. Now, being very wise, using children. Now, who can't, very few cannot appreciate the beauty that you see a child dressed up on a horse, little just darling little babies, you just, this is beautiful, and they're just as mannered on that horse and everything. And verse 25, and it greatly pleased the king, and he wondered at it. And when Rechiah sat before him, the king asked him concerning all his works. And Rechiah spoke all his words wisely before the king, his servants, and all inhabitants of Egypt. Now remember, he's a wise man. He understands. He spent much time pondering different things. And when the king heard the words of Rechiah and his wisdom, Rechiah found grace, favor. Now, when you say grace, you're saying favor. How somebody come before you and they have a good plan, or selling you something, or trying to get you to buy something, and they come and they say it so wonderfully that they obtain favor that you might buy that product for them, whether you need it or not. This is the reason of advertising. It's called, they say it's a product of the Greek, but we can see that it's definitely a product of this man, Rechiah, because he sold nothing to the king. And his wisdom, Rechiah found favor in his sight, and he met with grace and kindness from all servants of the king, from all the inhabitants of Egypt, on account of his wisdom and excellent speeches. And from that time they loved him exceedingly. And the king answered and said to Rechiah, thy name shall be no more called Rechiah, but Pharoh. Now, this is the history of pharaohs, how the rulers of Egypt become pharaohs. This is what the angels are saying to Moses. And those of us, some of us, we would say, yeah, maybe. But to those of us who believe and know these scriptures to be true, or these historical accounts to be true, because this is told by an angel, or one who stood in the presence of the Most High, or constantly stands in the presence of the Most High, shall thy name be, since thou didst exact a tax from the dead. And he called his name Pharoh. And the king and his subjects loved Rechiah for his wisdom, and they consulted with all the inhabitants of Egypt to make him perfect under the king. And all the inhabitants of Egypt and all his wise men did so, and it was made law in Egypt, or Misraim, and they made Rekai and Pharoh perfect under Osiris. Now, this is before Joseph. This is before Joseph was even thought of. Osiris, even Rekai. He was Rekai and Pharoh perfect under Osiris. In other words, he was second in command under the king of Egypt. Now, and Rekai and Pharoh governed over Egypt, daily administering justice to the whole city. But Osiris, the king, would judge the people. Now, this is how he did it. He capitalized while the king was just doing his business. Now, the king would judge the people of the land one day in the year, and when he went out to make his appearance. And Rekai, Pharoh, cunningly usurped the government of Egypt, and he exacted a tax from all the inhabitants of Egypt. Now, everybody loves money. Whether it's for good or evil, people need and they want money. Yes. And 32, and all the inhabitants of Egypt greatly loved Rekai and Pharoh. Rekai and Pharoh is his name. Now, and they made a decree to call every king that should reign over them and their seed in Egypt Pharaoh. Therefore, all the kings that reigned in Egypt from that time forward were called Pharaoh unto this day. And with that, we're going to say peace.